Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, and Yusra, before you announce me, I lose no time. Change the slide and we get on with this. Thank you. So, thank you, Dawn Group, and my session chair, Ali Chima, for that absolutely stellar presentation. I completely agree with all your points, particularly the last one. That population is inextricably linked with the challenge of any development goal, including climate action. And for that reason, I actually bother to chair a parliamentary, well, it's a caucus, but it's the Population Council for the year for Pakistan, where we try to convene parliamentarians to bring urgency and, lend their voice to actually consider bringing down fertility rates, because that impacts everything. Now, before I get into the keynote, there's a bit of schizophrenia about today's session here in my mind, which echoes Pakistan's schizophrenia about climate change and multilateralism, which is like, am I supposed to keep talking, or am I supposed to come there and do a fireside? So we decided between us that we'll just take it as it comes. And since there's a flight to Karachi looming at the end of this session, I'm going to play it by ear. It is highly unlikely that I will make it back there for the fireside. So with those words, I quickly want to also thank and acknowledge the Dawn Media Group and all their partners for bringing this important convening together and putting their considerable heft and purpose behind this. Because, if legacy media tries to make climate and environmental issues central part of the public conversation, we're halfway there, which of course will not stop me from saying, when the National Clean Air Policy is announced, hello editor, where are you? Right there. Take it out of Metro page 3 and put it front and center. When, for instance, a few days ago, the power minister I took permission from him, he's a brave man, to say all this. And we have a friend's contract, so all is well. But say the power minister says, Pakistan's energy mix is now 55% renewable. Well, I think that's a very big, big number, and it's a big statement to make. I can sort of break that down and disaggregate it, but I think the media needs to ask the inconvenient questions from all of us and amplify the issue so that it doesn't become eminently forgettable. And here I'm not beating down on the Dawn Group, at least they're doing this, and they'll go further. But mostly, I think other than the Guardian newspaper in the UK, everywhere in the world, if I make one eminently forgettable statement about the political opposition or what we are having for tea tomorrow in another forgettable meeting in the high corridors of politics, believe me, it will be the front page or the back page at the very least. So I think this is a problem climate stress and environmentalists encounter the world over. And it's one of the themes we discussed at the World Economic Forum for a while, that why is there resistance to climate change? So to me, this is a structural and fundamental issue. You've got this slide on backwards. The first slide is this, the many futures before us, because climate change now is going to define our future, not so much climate change as our choices. It is going to be the choices we make as countries, as individuals, as peoples, and even as multilateral assemblies. Because climate change, you like it or not, goes from global to local. It knows no borders, and it will not recognize that, as people have found out. In 2022, I remember saying, what went on in Pakistan will not stay in Pakistan. That was our, insignia for the COP27. And I'm very sorry to say, many countries then saw 2 years of climate hell unfold in front of them. You've all seen the Los Angeles fires, the Red Mountain. the burning mountain. But you have not heard too much about a similar fire that went on in Balochistan 2 years ago. That's because the media wasn't interested. It's too remote an area. If it was the Margalas burning, in what is known as the fire season, you would have it on TV. But in Balochistan, there was an event in 2022 which burnt down thousands of acres of pine cone forests, which provide livelihoods for many more thousands of people. Even my researchers not interested in it. I kept asking for an update. I didn't get it. But I'm very focused on that because that fire raged on for weeks. It consumed most of Pakistan's, Balochistan's juniper, which takes over 50 years to grow and provides livelihoods and exports for over $2 billion. So it is something that we have to look around us to lay our fingers into. In that sense, my point one is, for Pakistan and the world, the scatter is too great. The challenge is very, very quantum. It's not a 20th century conversation or a 20th century challenge. Quantum means it is everywhere, at all places, at the same time. And the more it accelerates, the more the climate clock ticks, which is faster and faster, it is going to be at your doorstep. There is a human reaction to this, and it's also, in Pakistan particularly, in many countries. Climate denialism is coming back to define our responses. And what that means is we have an epistemical arrogance that it's not going to happen to us. It won't happen again, maybe then, because we're really not responsible. Which brings me to the heart of what I want to speak about, which is who is going to take responsibility. Turns a bit of the climate justice argument around on its head because, as Mr. Chima says, climate action is not just about climate justice. Of course, it's not. It's very many things. And it's going to take more than 20 minutes to unpack those, so I'm not going to unpack all of those. There are better specialists than me that will address each sectoral challenge. But the broad issues that I see looming in front of Pakistan are, quite simple. They are three. One is that we have decided in many ways to continue with looking at climate as an external problem. Is this my fault because I brought up climate justice at COP27? Of course not. Okay, maybe a little bit. But climate justice is integral to how the global north and the south see each other. That is the climate bargain we strike at what are known as the Conference of Parties. We have had 29 of those, ladies and gentlemen. And before I say that they can sometimes end up becoming theater, like all conferences, even theater has its value. It raises the public question and asks the inconvenient questions. So in doing so, what have we achieved at the multilateral level? Because that's what I was asked to speak on. And multilaterally, look, 2027, we got ourselves a loss and damage fund because what did the World Bank tell us? That Pakistan's survival or sustainability for growth, as Mr. Chima says, for everything, you need $348 billion. I keep repeating that figure. It has never gone out of my head. $348 billion until 2030, not 2047. Mid-century is a different ballgame altogether. Pakistan needs to understand that it is not just finance, but it is this business as usual, the BAU idea of action that will change the future for us. Either we continue with business as usual, which, make no mistake, we are, or we go forward in radical changes in how we think, how we treat climate as not an add-on thing or a separate subject or a niche issue. We make it the central lens through which every development action is taken. And why I say it is because we have a strange relationship with multilateralism and ourselves. We are still unable to design, for instance, projects that I saw an earlier session talk about with great erudition. Climate finance is the bottleneck. It chokes everything. That's the second point for multilateralism. And most of the COPs, COP30, will also be about climate finance, without generating anywhere close to the quantum that the world needs, particularly the developing world. The developing world needs anywhere from $1.3 trillion per year to what some people estimate as $6 trillion. The figures are huge. They're huge. And everyone then asks, where will this money come from? At every COP, we're told, no, public finance internationally is not available. And I want to reiterate that message. My most important bumper sticker for Pakistanis today is, no one is coming for you. If your house is burning, which it is, please smell the flames and the fumes and get it together with the fire hose yourself. Okay, that is my most important message, which does not mean that if 4 houses away, I know that someone was responsible or partially responsible for setting this fire, I will not seek to bring them to justice. Let's not colonize our minds further. We should seek that justice. That is the heart of the bargain that is struck at COP29, or should be struck at COP30 rather, but we have lost leadership on loss and damage. You don't even hear about it. It has not raised more than $800 million. And so Pakistan must ask. Any woman will tell you, you do not get your rights by expecting it to filter down to you as part of an entitlement program or a call to justice. It does not. You have to push for it. Having said that, pushing for climate finance is your right, it's an entitlement, don't change that. Decolonize further, please. I hear that people were talking about bankable projects, design them so they reach financial close, they attract investment, bring the private sector in. We have to do that all in Pakistan, because no one is bringing those trillions of dollars to your doorstep. Even the bank is going to give you loans. They're just going to give you loans and increase your indebtedness. So before we keep strategically drifting forward, and I don't think Pakistan has totally done that, I think we've taken some steps, this is what keeps me awake at night. Somebody asked, Misiki, you asked me, what keeps me awake at night? This is what keeps me awake at night, the strategic drift that the world is in right now into acute climate stress. And Pakistan is a poster child for the triple planetary crisis, the pollution which we are entirely responsible for, not like climate change, not the greenhouse gas emissions that creates the overheating of the planet, the pollution, the loss of biodiversity, entirely our fault, the loss of green cover, forest cover, polluted rivers, polluted air, entirely our fault, and take responsibility for it. But the biggest crisis is going to be overheating. That is something we are not causing. We're less than a 1% emitter, but again, that mountain is burning, and to get beyond that red mountain, what do? You take clear stock of what's happening in the world. Multilateralism is retreating. Smell the coffee. The rules-based order after the Second World War is in ICU. So different rules will apply for different actors. And you've already seen that, okay? When you focus that down to climate finance and your entitlements, you're very lucky you got the loss and damage fund. But now it's lost traction. We haven't heard anything from Team Pakistan for 2 years on it. And where we need to go now is understand that even if that fund gets capitalized by the global north, I don't think that Pakistan, at this rate, with the kind of projectization needed, will be able to extract the funds needed. $348 billion until 2030 is a huge amount, but it will be the cost of inaction also. Remember that. There are costs to inaction at home. So what does that mean? It means that we, again, say, all right, we will talk about climate justice, we will pursue it with diligence, integrity, and consistency. And one last thing on multilateralism and climate justice. So make no other mistake, and I'm sure my friend Harjeet Singh from the Fossil Fuels Treaty will tell you this later, or has already told you, the money is out there. Internationally, the money is there. But don't assume it's coming to you just because it's an entitlement, because you did not heat up the atmosphere. Just to sober everyone's minds, before you jettison climate justice as an ask, decolonize, decolonize. $7 trillion in 2022. $7 trillion in 2022 was just the subsidy given to the fossil fuel industry. There are many other staggering figures like that. So the money's out there, but it's with private capital. And we get told internationally that you have to go to the private sector. Yes, go to the private sector at home and abroad, but remember, the private sector never works on what it owes you. There's only so much ESG you can mobilize, right? But do that, do that. We've got to do that. We are not even doing that right now. So we've got to step up. And why I say this matters is because, look, we are not anywhere too far from our NDC, nationally determined contributions, the energy transition. If the minister is saying 55%, and I can tell you Pakistan is going through a huge solar revolution. It is absolutely quantum. It is happening outside of the public sector. It is happening because there was an enabling policy called net metering. It's enabling policy, and the tariffs and the taxation ecosystem. But there it is. Pakistan has imported 1/3 of its installed capacity in 1 year in solar panels from China. That should tell you something. The public sector has caught up to that, and that's a different debate. But on our NDCs, we can make that transition well before mid-century. We can even up the ambition on that. And the same goes for electric vehicles, which will reduce the pollution, the thick pollution, especially in the Punjab, in the air we breathe, because it's not just an impact on fertility. Pollution is a serial killer in Pakistan. It kills about 128,000 people every year, and 11 million children are impacted by it. They can't go to school in Lahore in what I call the 5th season of Pakistan. India and Pakistan now have 5th seasons. So, please sober your minds. Remember the National Clean Air Policy? It was designed to address this. And it's still very much out there with low-hanging fruit-type solutions, which are not too expensive for us to change the game. Now, what I also want to address as a structural problem is this business of integrated policy and who takes responsibility. If Islamabad rolls out a policy, it is often to meet treaty obligations, at least 26 treaty obligations internationally. But it is also responding to local conditions. Each province, believe it or not, has an excellent climate policy document. Stellar. We now have a brilliant national adaptation plan, if I may pat myself on the back or shoulder for that. But where is it going? It needs to, the federal government's jobs are just to be the regulator, to make the policies, and then the actions have to be taken by the provinces and local actors and whole of country. Whole of country is how climate transitions happen, how environmental changes actually roll back, where you start getting your blue skies back, and when the most polluted, second most polluted river in the world, which is the Indus, and which is your lifeline for 90% of your fresh water, starts becoming less toxic. So it's a question of defining our responsibility. And what is my most important resilience building project, in my mind, problem? That is Pakistan's water and food security nexus. Now, I don't like jargon. I'm trying not to speak with any of that, because often it substitutes for action. And here we treat this as a call to action, but remember, take this seriously. Pakistan needs to change its relationship with water. It is fundamental to the climate and environment and biodiversity equation. It is fundamental to the economy. All of Pakistan's cities, as the Living Indus session will tell you, all of Pakistan's cities are clustered around the Indus. That's how civilizations evolved, except for Quetta. And all of them dump toxic effluent into that river. That's how it's become the second most polluted river in the world. And thank you for that glass bottle, because single-use plastics are also choking the coastline of my cities and Balochistan, Sindh and Balochistan. That's because of human consumption. Now, no international donor is doing that. That is something we are doing ourselves. That is something we can actually take responsibility for. So is urban circularity even a big thing? It should be huge. Pakistan is one of the fastest growing urban countries in the world, in South Asia right now, faster than India in terms of urbanization. And we're, I think, managing only 1% of our solid wastewater, the wastewater. In Rawal Dam, this is a small city, take Islamabad, comes under my purview as standing committee chair. 9 billion gallons of waste are dumped into this dam. It supplies the water for Islamabad and Rawalpindi. Please start asking those questions. Please start putting them on page 2 at least. And please start understanding that this is happening everywhere in Pakistan. So in this arc of actions from global to local, if there are local actions to take, then they have to be related to water. Agriculture is very much part of it. There are different actions needed for our rural areas. And what should keep you awake in the morning and hopeful is that Pakistan has actually got one of the most resilient soil and terrains that we've seen. After the 2022 flood, 1/3 of Pakistan was submerged underwater. Many of us did not expect a great deal of it to come back. Yesterday, I was driving through most of 2 days ago, parts of Sindh and Punjab are green again. But that need not happen again. Well, parts of Sindh are not because of the salinity. So we have a problem with water. There is competition on it. And ladies and gentlemen, this is what keeps me awake at night. 2025, we are going to be officially water scarce. Why are we not talking about that? Why am I making videos and telling people not to waste their water? Why? Because we are, per capita, we are one of the largest consumers of water per capita, 4th largest. Anyway, in the 10. So, while there is a lot you can't do about global warming, the heat waves will continue, they will intensify because nobody is switching that switch off. The COP29 told us that emissions are growing. The Paris goals of 1.5 are not alive. The fossil fuel emissions are also growing, so global warming will continue to grow. And lastly, I want to remind you that fix your narrative. Pakistan gets the hottest cities in the world for the last 3 years in the summer. That's 53 degrees, Jacobabad, Dadu, Turbat, in succession and higher. They will rise. That's not fit for human habitation. Just for perspective, in London, in the UK, when it reaches 40 degrees, they declare an emergency. It's time to declare that now, people. Thank you very much.